It's amazing how you could just pull up an app,
Yeah.
see all those planes moving around an airport or track someone's flight across the country.
Yeah, it feels so normal now.
But behind that, behind those little dots, there's this huge complex system,
Mm.
really complex, making sure everything is tracked, for safety, for efficiency.
Absolutely. And while most of us just see the end result on our screens, there's a whole industry, a massive market focused purely on the technology that makes all that global tracking possible and reliable.
Exactly. And that specific market is what we're diving into today.
We're looking at the flight tracking systems market.
That's right. Our source for this is specific. Excerpts from the Global Flight Tracking System Market Forecast 2021-2033. It's a report from Cognitive Market Research.
And our mission here is really to unpack the numbers in this report for you. We want to look at the market value, basically, the money generated by companies selling these systems.
We'll start back in 2021, look at projections for 2025, and then all the way out to 2033.
Yeah, and we'll also look at the growth rates, the CAGRs, compound annual growth rates across different parts of the world, different countries, to sort of map out where this market's been and where it seems to be heading.
Okay, so let's set the scene then. The big picture globally. Where did things stand in 2021 according to this source?
Right, so globally, the flight tracking system market was generating about $456 million in revenue back then.
$456 million in 2021. And looking ahead.
Well, the forecast shows that figure climbing quite a bit. By 2033, the projection is over $852 million.
Wow, nearly double.
Yeah, it works out to an overall global CAGR of 5.34% over that whole period. So it signals a pretty clear, consistent growth trend for these technologies worldwide.
Okay, so a definite expansion globally. But let's break that down now. Where is this growth actually happening? Let's go region by region.
Sounds good. We can look at the revenue numbers, 2021, 2025, 2033, and maybe point out some key countries or trends within each region.
Perfect. Let's start with North America.
Okay, North America. It held a pretty big slice of the pie in 2021, around $169 million in revenue.
And the projection.
It's projected to grow to about $202 million by 2025, and then looking out further to roughly $287 million by 2033.
Okay, and the growth rate for the region overall?
The regional CAGR for North America is calculated at a steady 4.511%.
Right, and I assume the U.S. makes up the bulk of that.
Oh, absolutely, as you'd expect. The source puts the U.S. market at approximately $129 million back in 2021. Growing to about $211 million by 2033. That gives the U.S. a KGR of 4.161%.
Okay. What about Canada and Mexico?
Yeah, they're significant contributors too. Canada started around $24.5 million in 2021, and the forecast sees it hitting almost $48 million by 2033. That's growth rate. Canada's CGR is actually higher, 5.668%. Mexico started at roughly $15 million, projected to reach nearly $28 million by 2033, with a KGR of 5.348%.
Huh. So that's interesting. Like you said, Canada's growth rate is projected to be quite a bit faster than the U.S. within North America.
It is, yeah. Definitely something the report highlights.
Okay, let's cross the Atlantic. Europe. What's the story there?
Europe's market was valued around $127 million in 2021. The forecast sees that growing to about $155 million by 2025, and then reaching over $226 million by 2033.
And the overall European growth rate?
The regional TGR for Europe comes in at 4.903%, a bit higher than North America's overall rate.
And Europe's obviously very diverse. Any standouts there?
Well, the report specifically mentions the United Kingdom and Germany showing particularly strong projected growth.
Okay.
The UK market was about $21.6 million in 2021, forecasted to grow to over $44 million by 2033. And the source actually highlights the UK as having the highest CAGR in Europe.
Right. What's the number?
Pretty significant, 6.174%.
Wow, okay. And Germany?
Germany also shows, robust expansion. Started at about $27.2 million in 2021, projected to hit over $53 million by 2033. That's a CAGR of 5.71%. Also very strong.
So UK and Germany leading the charge in terms of growth speed in Europe.
Definitely. But there are other significant markets mentioned too. France, for example, growing from around $12.2 million to nearly $22 million by 2033. Italy, similarly, goes from about $11.3 million to around $21 million.
Right.
Russia also shows growth from $18.6 million up to $29.5 million.
And the report lists quite a few others too, doesn't it? Spain, Sweden?
Yeah, Spain from about $9.1 million projected to nearly $15 million. Sweden from $6.1 million to almost $10 million. Denmark from $6.8 million to over $10 million.
Switzerland, Luxembourg.
Switzerland from around $5 million to $7 million, and even, smaller markets like Luxembourg showing growth from $2.4 million to $3.4 million, plus a rest of Europe category.
So it seems while the UK and Germany might have the fastest rates, the growth is pretty widespread across the continent.
That's a good way to put it. It's broad-based expansion.
Okay. Now, you mentioned things accelerating elsewhere. Asia-Pacific.
Ah, yes, Asia-Pacific. This is where the report really emphasizes some major growth dynamics. The market here is projected to more than double in size between 2021 and 2033.
Double. Wow. What are the starting and ending numbers?
Starting at about $91.7 million in 2021, it's expected to surge to over $204 million by 2033.
Okay, that's a huge jump. And the CAGR?
That translates to a regional CER of 6.861%.
Right, which is, like you said, noticeably higher than the global average and definitely higher than North America and Europe we just discussed.
Exactly. It's a key growth engine identified in the report.
What's driving that, do you think? Or what does the source suggest?
Well, it likely reflects the massive investments happening in aviation infrastructure across many parts of Asia-Pacific. Air travel is just expanding so rapidly there.
Makes sense. Modernizing to keep up.
Precisely. And the source actually points to India as a kind of standout example of this trend.
You mentioned a growth star earlier. Is that India?
That's the one. The numbers for India are pretty striking. It's projected to jump from about $11 million in 2021 to over $31 million by 2033.
Still a huge percentage increase.
It is. And here's the key part. This growth delivers the highest individual country CAGR among all the nations listed in the source.
Get out. What is it?
It comes in at a really remarkable 8.97%.
Nearly 9%. That's significantly faster than almost anywhere else we've talked about.
Significantly, yes. Really outpacing most other major markets globally, according to these projections.
Incredible. Now, China is obviously a huge market there too, right, in terms of sheer size.
Oh, absolutely. China represents the largest market size within APAC. Started at about $36.7 million in 2021, and it's projected to grow to over $82.8 million by 2033. Still very strong growth.
And Japan?
Japan also shows solid figures, from around $14.8 million up to nearly $30 million over the forecast period. South Korea is projected from $8.7 million to almost $18 million. Australia from about $5.7 million to $14.5 million.
So similar strong growth patterns across the board there.
Yeah, pretty much. The report also gives numbers for Singapore, going from $3.4 million to $6.5 million. Southeast Asia, treated as a group, from $4.4 million to nearly $9 million. Taiwan, from $3.1 million to $6.1 million.
Okay. So the big takeaway for APAC is really robust growth overall, China leading in size, but India showing absolutely exceptional speed.
That sums it up nicely, yeah. Strong across the region, but India's rate is really something else.
All right. Let's head south now, South America.
To South America.
No.
Also projected for steady growth, the market recorded about $28.7 million back in 2021. It's expected to grow at around $36 million by 2025 and then reach over $56 million by 2033.
And the breakdown within the region, Brazil must be significant.
It is. The source gives numbers for Brazil, projecting growth from about $11.2 million to $23.2 million. Argentina is expected to go from $5 million to $10.6 million. Colombia from $2.7 million to $5 million. Peru from $2.3 million to $4.3 million. Chile from $2.1 million to $4.1 million. And then there's a rest of South America category as well.
Yeah. So consistent expansion across the board there too, it seems.
Yes. Steady growth is the picture for South America.
Okay. Next up, the Middle East.
Right. The Middle East market was valued at around $23.3 million in 2021. It's expected to reach $28.1 million in 2025 and then grow to nearly $41.8 million by 2033.
And key markets there, Saudi Arabia, UAE.
Exactly. The report highlights Saudi Arabia going from about $9.2 million in 2021 to over $17 million by 2033, Turkey from $5 million to $8.8 million, the UAE from $3.2 million to $6.6 million.
Egypt, Qatar.
Yep. Egypt from $2.7 million projected to $4.5 million, and Qatar from $1.4 million up to $2 million, plus a rest of Middle East figure, again showing consistent growth across the region.
All right. And finally, Africa, that the source really points to for significant projected growth potential.
Okay, what are the numbers?
The market there was valued at about $16.4 million in 2021.
Relatively small starting point compared to others. True, but it's forecasted to more than double, reaching nearly $35.8 million by 2033.
Okay, that is a significant jump percentage-wise. Which countries are driving that mostly?
Nigeria and South Africa are specifically noted. Nigeria is projected for really substantial growth, from about $4.2 million in 2021 to nearly $10 million in 2033.
Wow.
And South Africa goes from $6.4 million to almost $13 million over the same period. The rest of Africa category also contributes strongly to this overall expansion.
So similar to APAC, in a way, maybe starting smaller but showing very dynamic future growth potential according to these forecasts.
That seems to be the conclusion from the source, yes. Africa is another key driver of future market growth in this area.
Okay, so let's just pull this all together then. We've gone around the globe. What's the main story this data tells us?
Well, the overall global picture from this cognitive market research report is definitely one of clear and quite significant growth in the flight tracking system market, looking out from 2021 all the way to 2033.
Steady expansion in the established markets.
Right. North America and Europe show that solid, steady expansion. But the data really indicates that regions like Asia-Pacific and also Africa are projected to experience particularly dynamic and rapid growth rates over this forecast period. They're the hotspots.
And maybe connecting this back to you, the listener. Why do these market numbers matter? It sounds a bit abstract, millions of dollars here and there.
Well, it's not just abstract. The source itself links this market expansion directly to something very tangible, the rapid modernization of global aviation infrastructure.
Oh, okay.
So when you hear about all this investment and growth in flight tracking systems, it actually translates into real-world improvements, better air traffic management, enhanced safety protocols.
And ultimately, just more reliable air travel for everyone, right? For you when you get on the plane.
Exactly. It's the foundational technology that has to keep pace as air traffic increases globally. These numbers really paint a picture of that necessary investment.
It's the system behind the scenes making things work better and safer. Which, I guess, brings us to a final thought for you to chew on, based just on this deep dive into the data we've discussed.
Okay.
Given this really substantial global investment, this projected growth in flight tracking tech over the next decade, all focused on modernizing aviation. What else might this enable? What other maybe interconnected technologies or perhaps even entirely new capabilities in air travel?
That we aren't even really talking about yet.
Exactly. What might this level of foundational infrastructure development unlock or even, necessitate down the road?
Yeah. It makes you think beyond just the tracking itself, doesn't it, to the whole interconnected ecosystem of aviation technology.
It does. Definitely something to think about based on where this market data suggests things are heading. Okay, let's unpack this. Think about those air traffic control screens, right? Thousands of planes all over the world.
Yeah, crisscrossing everywhere.
Exactly. And knowing where each one is, like down to the second, that kind of visibility, it's not just cool tech, it's absolutely vital for safety, efficiency, everything in aviation today.
It really is.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into the market that makes that possible. The flight tracking system market.
It's such a foundational piece of the whole aviation puzzle, but it's also changing really fast. Most people just see the app on their phone tracking a flight.
Right, the consumer end.
But the actual systems behind that, incredibly complex stuff doing the real heavy lifting.
Totally. And our deep dive today, it's based on insights from cognitive market research. We're going to explore what's driving this market, what's kind of holding it back, and really importantly, where the innovation is headed. And hey, for those of you who might remember a previous deep dive where we touched on revenue forecasts for this sector, think of this as the background story, the why behind those numbers.
Precisely. And why should this matter to you? Well, maybe you're into technology or logistics, maybe you fly a lot, or you're just curious about these huge systems that connect the world.
Yeah, it's pretty fundamental.
Understanding flight tracking is key. It's way more than just dots moving on a screen. It's about safety rules, cutting-edge tech, handling massive amounts of real-time data.
And just managing all those planes in the sky.
Right. Navigating increasingly crowded skies. It really does touch everyone who, benefits from global travel and commerce.
Okay, so let's dive in then. What's really pushing this market forward? What are the big drivers the source points to?
Well, the absolute #1 driver, and it's become painfully clear, really, is this huge demand for better aircraft safety and real-time monitoring.
Okay.
It's often a direct reaction, sadly, to some high-profile incidents where knowing exactly where a plane was right then and there became the critical question.
Yeah, those times when everyone's just glued to the news,
Yeah.
waiting. So that directly fuels demand for better tracking.
Directly.
Yeah.
Those events really highlighted how crucial it is to have constant, reliable location information for air traffic control, for the airline's own operations centers.
Yeah,
It just massively boosts situational awareness.
makes sense.
And maybe most importantly, if the worst does happen, it can cut down critical time for emergency response, for search and rescue. It's safety, yeah, but driven by hard lessons learned.
That makes total sense. Safety's got to be paramount in flying.
Yeah.
So are these safety needs then like written into rules? Is regulation another big push?
Oh, absolutely. They're tightly linked. Strict regulations are the second major force here. It's not just airlines choosing to upgrade. Authorities around the world are making sophisticated tracking basically mandatory.
So less about getting ahead of the competition, more about just meeting the standard baseline.
Exactly that. Bodies like ICO, that's the International Civil Aviation Organization, they've been key. They've brought in frameworks like GADIDIS, the Global Aeronautical Distress and Safety System. And the ETSAS, for example, it requires aircraft to automatically report their position at regular intervals, frequent intervals, even over remote oceans or deserts. For many airlines, this isn't optional anymore. It's just a core part of operating legally and safely.
Okay, so safety pressure backed by regulatory force. What about just more planes? Does the sheer increase in air traffic create a need?
Huge factor. That's arguably the third key driver. We're
Yeah.
seeing massive growth, especially in developing economies. The source specifically mentions Asia-Pacific and Africa seeing big jumps in commercial flights.
Right.
And as global air travel booms, well, airlines and air traffic managers face this huge pressure. How do you manage all that density safely, efficiently?
More planes, more potential for congestion, conflicts. So how do better tracking systems help sort that out?
They're absolutely essential tools now. It's not just about finding a plane in an emergency. Day to day, these systems feed the data for really smart route optimization.
Like avoiding bad weather or finding shortcuts?
Exactly. Thinking about real-time weather, managing the flow into busy airports, finding the most fuel-efficient altitudes and paths. Better tracking helps cut fuel burn, minimize delays through smarter sequencing, and just generally make better use of the airspace we have. It's efficiency driven by growth.
So safety, regulation, and traffic volume, pretty powerful drivers. But things are never that simple, are they? What are the main challenges, the restraints the sources talk about?
You're right. It's definitely not all clear skies. One of the biggest hurdles is still cost. Implementation costs, integration costs, they can be a really significant barrier.
Especially for who? Does it hit some harder than others?
The sources point specifically to smaller regional airlines. Buying these advanced tracking systems, the hardware, the software, the data feeds, it's a steep upfront cost.
I bet.
But it doesn't stop there. Getting these new sophisticated systems to actually talk to, older aircraft systems, older avionics, and the existing ground infrastructure, that can be really complex and expensive.
Yeah, plugging new tech into old tech is never easy.
Exactly. So that complexity, that cost, it can make smaller airlines hesitate. It creates a bit of a tech divide.
I can see that. Integrating cutting-edge stuff with planes that might be decades old. Tricky. What's another big worry?
Data security and closely related cybersecurity. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're constantly tracking and transmitting incredibly sensitive real-time data
Location, speed, altitude.
and increasingly operational data too from the plane itself,
Yep.
well, that creates new weak points, new vulnerabilities the industry is really grappling with.
Vulnerabilities how? What kind of risks?
Well, we're talking cyber attacks trying to intercept or even manipulate that tracking data. Imagine that. Or unauthorized access. And even thorny legal issues about who actually owns all that granular flight data.
Data ownership.
Yeah. So ensuring the communication is encrypted, that the data is safeguarded, it's become a massive priority for everyone. System providers, airlines, air traffic control, it's a constantly shifting threat.
Makes sense. That real-time data is valuable, a definite target.
Yeah.
What's the third major constraint mentioned?
Infrastructure gaps, limitations in coverage. Even with all the advances in satellite tech, there are still places where reliable real-time tracking gets patchy.
Really? Even with satellites? Whereabouts?
Particularly in very remote rural areas or over vast stretches of ocean. While satellites have improved things dramatically, you still sometimes need ground stations or specific types of coverage to get that continuous high-fidelity picture everywhere.
So gaps remain.
Yeah, gaps remain. It restricts how effective the tracking can be in certain parts of the world. And the source points to this ongoing need for, globally standardized, truly connected solutions, ground and space, to properly close those gaps.
Okay, so cost, security, infrastructure.
Yeah.
Big challenges. But looking ahead now, where's the exciting stuff happening? What are the key trends shaping the future here?
Right, this is where the innovation is really pushing things. Trend number one is deeper integrations, specifically combining satellite systems like ADS-B with the broader Internet of Things, or IoT.
ADS-B, yeah, you mentioned that automatic dependent surveillance broadcast. So how does linking that with IoT change the game?
Well, ADS-B is fast becoming the standard for that global visibility, knowing where planes are. But when you pair that location data with IoT, now you're talking about putting connected sensors on all sorts of aircraft parts.
Sensors on engines, landing gear, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And these sensors can transmit real-time diagnostic info, performance data from the aircraft itself, along with its location.
Wow, so what does that enable?
Things like predictive maintenance. Instead of just waiting for a scheduled checkup or, worse, a failure, airlines can monitor component health in real time. They can spot potential issues brewing and schedule maintenance proactively.
That must save a lot of money and hassle.
Huge savings, avoiding costly, unexpected downtime, improving reliability. Tracking is moving beyond just where is the plane to how is the plane doing.
That's a major shift. Location plus health monitoring. What's the next big trend using all this data?
The rise of artificial intelligence and big data analytics. Think about it. These tracking systems plus the IoT sensors, they're generating just enormous amounts of data. Position, speed, altitude, engine temps, vibrations, weather data, air traffic flows. It's way too much for humans to process effectively on their own.
A data deluge, so AI comes in to make sense of it all. What can AI do with that?
Precisely. AI algorithms are being used for several critical things, often in real time. One is spotting anomalies, not just a plain way off course, but maybe subtle changes in performance that could signal an emerging problem long before a human might notice.
Like an early warning system?
Kind of, yeah. And AI is also transforming route optimization. It can crunch vast data sets, winds, turbulence forecasts, congestion, even things like volcanic ash clouds, to suggest the absolute optimal flight path, constantly updated, saving fuel, saving time, way beyond what a person could calculate manually.
No, AI is making flying smarter, more efficient.
Got it.
And the third trend the sources highlight.
It's the move towards mobile and cloud-based platforms for accessing all this tracking information. This is really about accessibility.
Accessibility to who? Just the airline bosses.
No, much broader. From pilots and dispatchers needing quick updates on a tablet, to ground crews coordinating arrivals, even down to passengers wanting accurate real-time info on their flight.
Ah, so the apps we use are part of this trend.
Exactly. Cloud platforms make the data available basically anywhere there's internet, on all sorts of devices.
And the benefit of that wider access.
It just smooths out communication across different teams. It increases transparency within airline and airport operations. And yeah, it provides that connected experience passengers increasingly expect, seeing exactly where their plane is, getting instant delay updates. It's about getting the right info to the right people securely.
Okay, so tech integration moving beyond just location. AI crunching the numbers for smarter flying, and mobile cloud making it accessible to everyone. That paints a pretty clear picture of a more connected, intelligent future for flight tracking.
It definitely points that way, yeah.
So pulling it all together then, based on these sources, the flight tracking system market, it's clearly at this really pivotal moment. It's being pushed hard by that need for safety, backed up strongly by global regulations, and really fueled by the sheer growth and complexity of air travel today.
Absolutely. And because of all that, the whole aviation industry is rapidly adopting these smarter, more connected tracking solutions. But as the source is careful to point out, getting to the market's full potential means tackling those challenges we talked about.
Right.
Building really strong cybersecurity, figuring out how to ease the cost burden, especially for smaller airlines, and closing those stubborn infrastructure gaps for truly seamless global coverage.
It's a complicated market, definitely dynamic, but just so fundamental to how our air travel system works, safely and efficiently. Hopefully this deep dive helps you, our listener, understand those moving parts a bit better.
Yeah, whether you're looking at it as an investor, an analyst, or you're just curious about the tech that keeps things moving.
A lot going on under the hood, so to speak. Okay, and as we wrap up, here's something for you to think about, drawn right from what we've been discussing. Given how much the aviation industry is leaning on all this real-time data and using AI to optimize everything from safety warnings to flight paths, how will this incredibly interconnected global system really square that circle? How do you balance the huge potential of all this data with the absolute critical need for ironclad data privacy and cybersecurity?
That's a fundamental tension, isn't it? Affects every single player.
It really is. Definitely something to ponder.